actually don't know what I'm doing.
That's just the way of it at this point.
I don't understand.
Oh, I hit escape. Hey! New for 2018. They fixed it.
So I'll have to cut that part out.
Yes, I guess you will.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Steel Forum. It is a beautiful, snowy day here in Rochester, New York. We got about 8 inches of snow this morning, or over the night anyways. And as I was sitting here watching those poor suckers drive their way into work, I thought about how grateful I am that I'm sitting here in my warm, cozy living room doing my work. And that brought me up to this morning's topic, which is the things that detailers are thankful for. It's holiday appropriate, so we figured this would be a great time to talk about all the things that we're grateful for. I know a lot of our tone sometimes on the channel is complaining or whiny, but that's because we're detailers. We like to complain. It's in our nature. But today I'm going to talk about what I'm thankful for. Hopefully we're going to hear some of the things that Matt is thankful for. Surely I am on the top of his list of things he's thankful for. But there's got to be some more than that. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, the first thing that I'm thankful for, and it's probably not the most thankful for, but the thing that I'm thankful for is my Surface Pro. Now, for you detailers out there who have never had the opportunity to use the Surface Pro, it is a absolutely fantastic piece of hardware for detailers. It comes with a nifty little pen, lets you write on the screen. If you have Bluebeam, you can do things like mark up the drawings, highlight, write your notes on there. I use it for checking all the time. Having that touch screen to scroll and pan through gives you that very papery feel because the pen is just that good. It's pressure sensitive, got all these things. Plus, it's got a lot of great apps for it. It can run any Windows program. We can scrub drawings on it over Wi-Fi, connected to our cloud network. It's great. I can sit in the family room. I can sit with the family. I can scrub my drawings. I can take, if we're on a long road trip, I'll take it with me. We can watch movies with the family. Or, I do a lot of checking when I'm on the road. I make that time a little bit more useful and can really help. So that's my number one thing. Matt, what about you? What's your first thing?
Well, first thing on my list is Bluebeam, which, kind of goes back to what you were saying. Mm-hmm. We got into that shortly before we even started the company, and it was what allowed us to go paperless in the first place. And without that, we would have to have some kind of a plotter or have drawings delivered to our house, and it just wouldn't be able to function without it at this point.
Yeah, you think back to those days of, working on the paper drawings, and at first, when we first switched to, okay, we got a couple monitors, we're going to go paperless. We just made that decision. We're going to rip this Band-Aid off, we're going to go paperless. It was a little rough just to get that start. But man, once you get a week, 2 weeks into it, you're never looking back. Especially today, and that brings me to one of the next items on my list, with big 4K monitors, multiple monitors. It's just a no-brainer. I mean, the drawings on my screen, because we use 40-inch monitors, are as big as they ever were on paper. And this is, I got my note here. One of my favorite things that I'm thankful for are section links in contract drawings. That ability to, you click on the section 6 on 502 and boom, you're looking at 6 on 502. It's amazing. There's no flipping back and forth. You can split the screen and look at 16 drawings all at the same time. Oh, it's just amazing.
When we first discovered that, it was witchcraft. It was, no, you can't just, I click the link and I'm there.
Yeah.
That's too good to be true. I mean, that was the greatest thing we'd ever seen up to that point.
Yeah, and it's crazy too, because people today have Bluebeam, and they have no idea that exists, or they won't spend the time, the hour maybe that it takes to go through and put the links and the bookmarks into their contract drawing set. And for me, when I download a set that I'm working on for a bid, and I go and I try to click on those sections and there's nothing there, I'm like, why are there no section links in this?
Just so you know, in the more recent versions of Bluebeam, we don't have the upgraded version. It's the Extreme or whatever it is. It will automatically go through and create the links for you, The only thing is it links to the whole page as opposed to we do it right down to the specific detail.
Yeah.
But it even cuts that hour of linking out of the job if you.
Right. But even with, right, one way or the other, it's still fantastic. It's just, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm convinced. So, and actually, that takes me almost right to the next one. So now that we're pretty much industry-wide, we're fairly paperless as far as the transmittal process and the contract drawing process goes, until those drawings actually get delivered to the shop or the field, and for a growing number of shops, not even to the shop, the ability to, okay, here's just a revised contract drawing set. We no longer have to go and take 67 pages of addenda and cut them out and paste little bits onto the drawing or tape them or whatever else. Being rid of that process, even at the cost of unclouded revisions in drawings, I will take it all day long over what we used to have to do to post addenda. It was ridiculous. And I'm so happy that now we just get, all right, here's the revised S202. Just replace S202. And, we just go in Bluebeam. Okay, this one's void. Here's the new one. Go to it. Oh, it's absolutely the best.
Used to spend hours with scissors and the clear tape and just putting in all the pieces wherever they fit into the paper set. Yeah,
and that was bad enough for a job that we had, but then you get a job that you're just bidding and it's got 8 addenda before the bid is even due.
Oh, yeah.
The worst, completely unpleasant. So I'm looking at my notes here, and I kind of skipped over the number 1, right? And I put a number 1 with a star next to it. I still skipped it. And that, for me, is working from home. The ability to not have to drive in Rochester weather. And I know you guys can see the bright glare in the background there. That's just snow. That is just a white orb of snow, because we've got, like I said, 8 inches of snow outside. It's not even Thanksgiving yet. And you get out on those roads and it's insane. People, for whatever reason, cannot drive in the snow, especially the first snow. And I watch my wife get in that car and drive off to school. And I am so happy to just sit here in my, slippers and my heat. I have a heater under my desk to keep my toesies warm. And it's great. Every time I'm miserable or something like that, all somebody has to do is remind me that I'm sitting here instead of, some mundane office with fluorescent lights and people who clip their fingernails at their desk and chew too loudly and all of those other things. So I know a lot of you are working for fabricators out there. Maybe they've been talking about, or you've been thinking about telecommuting, but they're a little bit leery. There's a lot of great articles out there about how employers tend to think that people are less productive when telecommuting, but it's actually the opposite is true. You get that extra time back. You're not stuck with all of the distractions of working in an office. And 2, they can save a little bit of money. They can, offer it to you as a benefit that costs them nothing. So you just save the money on your commuting, and as by virtue of that, they don't have to pay you quite as much, and that's a great asset to them. And the reality is, honestly, if you cannot trust somebody to work independently without you standing over their shoulder, then that person shouldn't be working for you anyways, especially in an office environment. For a shop guy, somebody that is producing something that's visible and you can see whether they're not working or not, that's one thing. But with this process, you just have to be able to hand the work off and know that it's going to come back to you. If you can't do that, you need to be looking at other employees.
It's just as easy to play solitaire and watch YouTube videos in the office as it is to do it at home.
Yeah.
So, you're going to get the productivity out of the person you're going to get regardless of where they are.
Yeah.
If they're going to cheat you, they're going to cheat you. But, if and that's worth just getting rid of them anyway. But you're going to know if that quality of work is there. If it's there in the office, you're going to get it in the telecommuting person. And odds are it's going to improve simply because they're going to have more time and less stress and be able to deal with things better that way.
Yeah. Now, you do have to keep an eye on their productivity, just like any other employee. If their productivity drops to like a stone, it's possible that they're doing something for somebody else. It's possible they're just not getting their work done for you. But either way, you should be doing that whether they're working, in an office right next to yours or halfway across the county. You need to judge them by what they produce, and that's pretty much all you can do.
So next on my list is gaming mice and gaming keyboards.
Oh yeah, I can't believe I left that off my list.
Oh, shame on you.
It's terrible.
Yeah, so we use Logitech gaming mice and keyboards, and having the programmable buttons on the keyboard, on the mouse, really allows you to cut down on the amount of time it takes to perform simple tasks. What you don't want to be doing is rooting around through drop-down menus trying to find that one command that you use all the time. You need to just have that at a press. If you've got and I'll show you right here for those that don't have such a thing. Look at all the buttons on that. That's crazy. I mean, most of us got our start with a 2 or 3 button mouse, and I can hit this little button, and now I've changed, that color change indicates that every one of those buttons has now changed what they do.
Yeah.
So I have different profiles for different programs, and I have different profiles within subparts of the program. So if I'm in a drawing editor versus a modeling station of the same program, I have a whole different set of commands already programmed in. And my keyboard is the same way, but I'm not going to yank that out and show you.
Yeah. And the G105 keyboard specifically, that's a cut above. There's some even above that, but they start adding a lot of features that are just for gamers. It's got a display on it, all sorts of other stuff. But with the G105, it's as easy to record a macro as I press a button on my keyboard, it starts recording. I type the commands that I want it to do over and over again, and then I hit the button again, and it records that. And then every time I want that series of commands, I just hit that button. I used it just yesterday. I was scrubbing some drawings and realized that the piece marking schema had changed. And so there's a series of commands in STS that you have to do to trigger the auto mark changing. But you have to do that on each sheet. And so I was, click, 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 change sheet, click, click, click. But I recorded it once, and then I just hit the button, hit the button, hit the button, hit the button. I don't know how many times you think 10 more, hit the buttons, and then I can, but.
And that was about 200 sheets you had to do that.
It was a lot of sheets, and it's faster because you're not waiting for those dialogues to show up, because for a lot of time in programs, even though the dialogue hasn't been fully drawn on your screen yet in those milliseconds, it's already ready to accept input. So the commands are being sent. It works its way right through. It's working so fast you don't even see the dialogue pop up, and it's done. It's on to the next sheet. So that's a huge one. I can't believe I left it off my list. And the next one on my list, I don't think you even know how to use yet, because I just do it in the background. But there's a website, a program. It's called If This Then That. It's shortened to IFTTT. And what it does is it allows you to script actions based on a whole bunch of different things that can happen. So one great example that I use is that if we get an email, we use Gmail, which you should all be using Gmail. If you have another email service, ditch it, get Gmail. And U-Haul truck just pulled my driveway. And so when we get an email and it has attachments, it automatically downloads that attachment to our Dropbox, puts it in a folder with the name of the person who sent it, and all those things. So later, when I look back and I know that, hey, this guy sent me a sketch sometime back in June, all I do is I go to that Dropbox folder and I can see a thumbnail of everything that this person sent me. I can sort it by date, and then I can just look until I see the sketch that I'm looking for. Whereas if I was in Gmail, trying to find that attachment can be really hard, because you have to open the email, then you have to open the attachment, et cetera, et cetera. It takes a long time. But we use Trello, so I can use Trello to create Trello and If This Then That to automatically create cards based on emails, and that helps us follow up and make sure that all of these things get done. And I'm going to tie this one together. I'm going to do two right in a row because we also use Dropbox. And Dropbox, right along with Bluebeam, is one of the things that made it possible for us to start our business, because we could have synced folders. We could work 50 miles apart from each other, and it was like we were sitting on the same network. You can't use SDS with Dropbox, but everything else, your contract drawings, your purchase orders, your spreadsheets, your calculator, all of that stuff is synced across us, and it's amazing. It's great. It just works. We pay for the Pro version, and we have a feature with it that's called Pack Rat, so that literally any file that I've ever put in Dropbox, I have access to forever. If I delete it, whatever else, it's still there. So we've had, situations where a customer comes back to us 6 months after we're done with a project. Why did you do this thing? And I can go back and trace all of that history and find those documents without needing a 5 terabyte server farm someplace to store all that data. So they store it for me. I can restore it whenever I want, and it's amazing. And
now that feature, that's been discontinued, right? Like, we're grandfathered in, but nobody new can get that.
Right. They have similar things. They cost a little bit more, but particularly with our model files, when we do a project transfer every night, or usually a couple times through the day as well, and we don't have to version that file. We used to keep all the different versions, so we would timestamp those models as we went through the day. But now, because Dropbox has unlimited version history, I can go back at any time and find on any day the model file that we're using on that day. So if we find out, and this has happened, hey, you got this revised drawing, you redid this whole model, we're not doing that anymore. Go back to the old way. Okay, no problem. I'll restore that old model, and we're up and running in a matter of minutes. It's amazing. What's your next thing?
So next thing on my list is macros and script.
Oh, yeah.
So, in SDS, they're called parametrics. I'm not sure what they're called in other software. Auto Lisp, maybe. It's coming to mind. I don't know if that. Yep. But at any time that you can write a short piece of code and have it automate the process of putting things into your model, of adding notes, adding documents to your drawings, whatever it is that it can do, anytime that you can automate something as opposed to having to do it out the long way and graphically model those parts in, or hand type all of those notes, it's such a huge time saver. You really you can't function without it with today's schedules in particular.
And it's not just the time, it's the annoyance, right? Like, I remember I did a project, it was at least 1,000 tons, and the whole perimeter had this ridiculously complex bent plate, outrigger, stud combination. And just the inane drudgery of putting in thousands and thousands of feet of bent plate pour stop back in the day, before effective parametrics and before components, we use those in SDS, but all the best software at least have this automation ability. I couldn't go back and do it the old way.
No. What is it you want to do? Add material, bent plate, point to point, fill out the legs. Then you're going to have to cope it to fit. Move on to the next beam. You go through that 100,000 times for all the members. Then you lay in all your outriggers. Yeah. And then you go, oh, wait, I need it to be 3/8 thick. I used quarter. Oh, no. Now it's just you select the beams, add component, bent plate, pour, stop, cope at the ends for columns.
Yep.
Oh, you messed it up? Multi-edit. Moving on.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah. All right. Next on my list, and I alluded to it earlier, but I did not really share the joy of 4K monitors.
Oh,
you're still working on 1080p. Get with the program. It is time for you to step up to the world of 4K. And you don't necessarily have to buy a monitor. A TV is not as good. I will acknowledge that the TV is not as good, but they're about a third the cost of 4K monitors, and they're still amazing. Uh, it's incredible the amount of screen real estate you get. It's amazing how nice it is on your eyes. It's just great. It's just great. I have no other way of saying it. So if you're still in the 1080p world, join us in the 21st century. It's nice and cozy here. So you got one? You got another one?
Yeah. Speedy RFI responses.
No.
Something to be thankful for.
Real things. We're talking about real things.
I can dream of unicorns.
No. I mean, yeah, we get speedy RFI responses, but then they're wrong.
They give you that moment of hope. It's that glimmer of hope of all I did was ask for north. Please tell me they gave me north. And what they do, the response is, see this drawing that you don't have. But for a moment, I got the response, and like it's exciting, like, I'm gonna get that answer.
See, you're still a summer child. It's got to be, because as soon as I get an RFI response, my immediate thought is, okay, let's mark this up and send it back to them. Like, it's not even let's incorporate this to the contract drawings. It's just, all right, let's tell them why the answer that they supposedly gave us is not an answer.
I am forever hopeful that the person I am talking to is intelligent. Yeah. I am almost always let down, but I always go into that next person as maybe this guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah. If you're an architect or an engineer, you happen to be out there listening to this, and you are responsible for these RFI responses, you're bad, and you should feel bad. And that's all there is to it. Do better. Just do better. I don't want to hear your crap. Just do better. Coordinate with architect is not an answer, okay? Now, if you call the architect and say, hey, I need you to coordinate this, that is a valid thing, right? You can ask the architect for a question, but just saying coordinate with architectural, I'm just going to bounce that right back to you. But we could do a whole episode, and we will do a whole episode on those ridiculous freaking notes that we get back from people. It's deeply personally offensive to me.
That sounds like it's going to have a part 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, God. These are licensed professionals, and things that they send back are just an embarrassment to the industry. It's terrible.
It'll be the first RFI response, A New Hope. Then you have to send that back. That's the engineer strikes back.
Yep.
And then what? You got the last word from the architect? Would be the third one?
Yeah.
Maybe,
right?
There's your trilogy.
Yeah, if it was reasonable by that point. That's usually, it's like RFI response 1, 2, and 3 revised. But I'm going to move on to something more positive, almost less detailing related, and they go together. I've got 2 of them. The first is great headphones. Now, I know a lot of you use headphones. Difference between Rode headphones, and I know they're dinged up, they're a couple years old, but the difference between great headphones and $20 headphones cannot be overstated for a detailer, especially one that's working from home. If there's people around, you get noise in the background, whatever else, this is my safe space. It's funny too, because my daughter has now been trained. She's like a Pavlovian dog. When I do this, she hears it wherever she is in the house, and hey Dad, what are you doing? What's up? And it's crazy, but they all understand that I've got my headphones on. The world goes away, and if I play just about anything, and that ties me into my next thing, I put an audiobook on, and I tune into my work, and just everything just gets better. You put a great book on, something that you love, a genre that you like, and those tasks that you have to do that are boring, like coordinating base plates with anchor bolt drawings, and there's 200 columns in this building, and 175 of them are the same, but you got to find those 25. that are different. It's, there is a lot of stuff like that in this business, and having these great headphones that I can listen to music or books on, it makes it so much less of a grind to do those things. And I'm really thankful for that.
Well, the next one on my list was video conferencing, but I feel like we've kind of discussed that through telecommuting.
All right. You got anything else? You got another?
Well, you ganked my 4K monitors. I do have 3 more. I'm worried that 2 of them you're going to unicorn me on again.
Well, that's good. I think that was actually that was fun to talk about.
So I'm going to go with my good one, and then we'll go to the unicorns next.
All right.
So 3D detailing software.
Okay.
Just
generally.
Just generally any 3D detailing software, as opposed to where I got my start, which was drafting table. And it's not that I'm not old enough that I should have started on a drafting table. I just started for the cheapest company ever, and they would not pay for a computer. So I had to sit at a drafting table with scissors and tape and learn with the drafting pencil, which still have.
Oh yeah, I still love my drafting
Still have my first drafting pencil. I got the scale somewhere in that closet behind me, but
I have scales, and I don't know why. I just have them scattered throughout my home. Like I'll just open a drawer, and there's a scale, and I'm like, how did this get here? What is this strange piece of
I haven't used it in 10 years, but
antiquity, right? Right.
Yep. But it wasn't until I cobbled together, because they would have their broken throwaway computers in a room, and I sat in that room for a weekend, and I picked at RAM chips and motherboards and hard drives and power supplies until I could assemble a computer from the guts of dead ones.
Yeah.
And then I got AutoCAD, and I could draw. I mean, it was really just
you get IntelliCAD.
No, it was Autodesk 2006.
Okay, all right.
But yeah,
because they were that cheap. I had IntelliCAD, which is like I don't know. The Aldi's version of AutoCAD. It could draw a lot. It was crazy, and like their whole concept of, well, let's give our employees the absolute worst tools that we can possibly afford, and then complain when they're not using.
And to be fair, it wasn't just that they took a big runny dump on their detailers. You went out in the shop and they had tape measures and soapstones.
Yeah.
I've got to sharpen up my soapstone so I can get a nice crisp line on this beam so I know where to cut it.
Yeah, and their tape measures, like I've legitimately saw people who had tacked their tape measure back together.
Yep. They tacked the tape measure back together. They wouldn't pay for the stud welders, so they would take a shear stud and set it on the beam and then fillet weld around the shear stud. Yeah. They didn't have the proper punches for slots, so they would take and punch a hole and then move it a little bit and then punch a hole and then move it a little bit and punch a hole and then torch it out. I mean, it was just everything they could do to be as cheap as possible, despite the fact that had to cost a fortune in labor to do everything the wrong way and the long way.
I will never forget the day that I walked out to our yard. Yeah. And saw a guy torch cutting the flange off of a beam to use it for plate.
Yep. I knew that was coming.
An extra piece of wide flange.
Yep.
And we were out of plate. I mean, really, what do you say to that?
You don't. You walk away and.
Right. And can you be surprised after you've walked out and seen that when your paycheck doesn't come on time? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. No. No, there was some definite ugliness.
Some war stories there.
You got 2 more?
I do. Like I said, you're going to give me grief that these are unicorns, but they are things that if they happen in my head, I would be really grateful for them.
Okay.
One of them actually does happen.
All right.
But I'll go with the more unicorny one first. So projects that stay on schedule. If they happened, that would be something I would be truly grateful for.
I'm trying to think back non-sarcastic.
I can't come up with anything. I've been thinking about it for like 20 minutes while we've been talking. And
Yeah.
I mean, we had a job a while ago that when we got it, they said, no rush. It'll take you like 2 weeks to draw it, but we need it in 4 or 5 months. So get to it when you get to it. And great. So we got the anchor bolt drawings going, and then we got another job. So we set that one aside because there's no rush, and we worked on this other job. And then we got an email that says, hey, I need those in a week.
Right.
It's hot now. But you already told me you knew it was going to take 2 weeks to draw. I need it now. I need it now. I need it now. Oh.
Do you remember the Princeton catwalks?
Yes, I do.
So we did this project for Berlin Steel, Princeton catwalks. And we owned the engineering. We had to design these catwalks from the ground up, right? So,
Well, from the roof down, I suppose.
Boo!
Ah.
All right, we had to design these from the roof down. And the customer had an idea of, all right, well, we'd like to make these out of angle and channel. It is delegated design. We can make them out of whatever we want. So design it that way. So we worked with our consulting engineer. We came up with a design. We submitted drawings, calculations, a whole bit. And the architect said, no, we want pipe. Okay. And it's like, great, fantastic. We just got a whole other project without having to bid anything. But on the other side, every time you have to draw one of these things over again, it gets harder and harder just to get over that mental barrier of, this is so stupid. Why am I doing this again? And so they argued about that for months and months, and the project just sat. And then, months would go by, and then we'd get an email, hey, can you look at this? And we would design a thing, put together a couple sketches. And just I think for at least a year, this went on before they ever came back. And eventually, they introduced into this design a concept of vibration isolation. So what they wanted to do is take this catwalk and suspend it from essentially what is a spring-loaded shock absorber like you would see on a car.
No, not quite. A shock absorber has two components, a spring and a dampener. This had no dampener.
No, it had like a rubber bushing thing that was maybe...
That was just cushioned against the spring, though.
Anyways,
but,
so...
Yeah.
So we went through the design process of this thing, and they sized them based on how much weight they need to take. Now, you have to design this for the worst case scenario, which is the catwalk is filled with people, which is never, ever going to happen, right? But you have to design for that. So they had to select this ridiculous vibration dampener whose spring is so strong at this point that it's never, ever going to be functional. It's supporting.
It's effectively rigid.
Right. Is capable of supporting 1,200 pounds. Right. So imagine that spring in a thing, and now instead of supporting 1,200 pounds, it's only actually supporting 50 pounds. How much is that really going to help you? And I mean, tens of thousands of dollars of change orders introduced to deal with these things, because now we also need to engineer the whole thing for the movement that could happen with these springs. And then they wanted us to account for the deflection in the rest of the building. Oh my God, it was crazy. And it's a beautiful theater now. I don't know if you've seen the pictures of it. It's called the Lewis Theater, Black Box Theater. Amazing project. I was glad to be, a part of it. It really is a beautiful theater now, but the money that was wasted on that is incredible
In that design.
And not to mention the schedule that, and they would come back to us in the middle of, several other projects and be like, okay, we need you to do some work now. It was like, you gotta wait. I'm sorry. We gotta do these other things. So, but we're getting negative. What's your next thing? You got another one?
So this is my last one. Are you ready for my last one?
I'm ready for your last.
All right.
Wing and a prayer thing.
Wing and a prayer. Customers that pay on time.
We have a few.
We do. And they're my favorite people of all time to work with.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We get our absolute best pricing. Like we've talked about issuing credit, can we give a pricing structure that has some type of early payment credit or something like that? But really, they save much more money by just paying us on time because they get my best bids, right?
Right.
I don't got to mess around. I don't have to deal with that.
Right.
So,
We've done everything to try to bribe them into paying, the people that don't pay on time to pay on time. At one point, we were prepared to offer a 10 or 15% discount if they paid within the terms of the contract.
right.
And they said no.
Yeah. No, we're not going to do it. And I would say we are among the most aggressive as far as collecting our money in the industry. Not as far as you need to pay us right now, but you do need to pay us. The amount of detailers that I've heard of who are like, oh yeah, they never paid, and they seem okay with that is just befuddling to me.
Right.
But
they continue working with customers that don't pay them. They continue with working with customers that they've agreed to 15 or 30-day terms, and they're at 90 days and not been paid, and they're still doing work for them.
Right. But
I'm sure they'll pay me eventually.
Money and schedule time that those on-time fabricator payers save is huge. Not only do they get our best pricing, but when they call and say, hey, I need you to do this project right away, they're absolutely on the top of our list. And nobody's going to talk me out of that because promised money and real money, two very different things. We had that guy from Boston who was like, I'm in this huge emergency. Basically, he got a project awarded a month ago and never awarded the contract, the detailing, never started the details. And he was like, can you work on it today? Can you get it done by tomorrow? And we went to bat for that guy, and then it's time for payment, and he's walking away. He doesn't want to pay us on time. And it's like, never again. You're never getting that level of service again if you don't pay us. But for the ones who do pay us, that we're so thankful for, they get ridiculous service for it. And we're charging them less to give them even better service. So, if you're a fabricator out there and you're listening, take heed because we're not alone. Every detailer I talk to says exactly the same thing. The people who pay the fastest, not the most, but the fastest, get the best service and the best prices.
Yep. And I'll give you another example of that. We've got a guy in the Midwest. We've been working with him for years. He sends us $500, $1,000 worth of work at a time. Okay. He doesn't do a lot of structural steel, but when he does get this little bit of structural, he sends it our way. I will put him ahead of everybody else on the list because he pays within 3 days of getting his drawings for approval.
Mm-hmm.
If he has drawings in hand, he will send me an email. Hey, I didn't get the invoice. Send me the invoice. I want to get your check out.
Yep.
So if this guy calls on a Friday afternoon, I will stop what I am doing and get his job out. I don't care what else is going on because nobody else pays that fast.
All right. So the last thing that I am thankful for, probably not the last thing, but the last thing that I'm going to bore you guys with is YouTube subscribers. That's right. That's you. You're going to hit that subscribe button. I know it seems silly. I know it seems stupid that we keep asking you for this like it's a thing, but we're at the point where we have to decide if we're going to keep doing this because this costs actual time to record these, edit them, and make them into something that's useful and entertaining, hopefully, for you to watch. So pretty much either those likes and those subscribes let us know that you're actually watching. Otherwise, we have no idea, right? We don't have sponsors. We don't have nothing. This is just our time that we're spending doing this instead of making details. So if you can, please take that moment, hit those buttons. It lets us know that you're there, that you're listening, and lets us keep recording these. And for the people who use our STS 2 tips, that also lets the people at STS2 know that, hey, these guys are producing the tips that we need. Give them the support they need to keep doing this. So do hit those buttons, please, for us so that we can keep doing this. Anything, last words, Matthew?
I think I just want to see this conversation continue down in the comments section. Why don't you guys let us know what sort of things you're thankful for as detailers down in the comment section below.
Yeah, we must have missed something big, right? Like if I got that far and did not put on my list customers who pay on time, then surely between our two enormous brains, there is something that got left off that list. So let us know what that thing is. Let us know if you have that customer who always pays on time, and just give us his phone number, her phone number, and we promise not to call them. Promise. Okay. Thanks again for visiting the Steel Forum. Like we said, hit those like and subscribe buttons, and we'll talk to you soon.